For the money, he had worn a dress. For the money, he had played the part of a silent seductress to break a vow of mative silence held by Caleb Vance, the heir to a Boston dynasty who spent his days in a sterile family chapel. The plan had been flawless. When Caleb finally broke, pulling Reese into a desperate kiss, a discreetly filmed video was all it took. Reese sent it to Caleb's mother, collected an obscene amount of money, and vanished. 1 month later, he stood in the doorway of his assigned dorm room at Northwood University. He checked the housing assignment on his phone again. Room 3B. No mistake. He looked back inside at the young man sitting by the window, a book resting in his lap. Impossibly, it was Caleb Vance, and his eyes were open. Reese's hand tightened on the handle of his suitcase. Caleb's eyes were not like other people's. They were a pale, almost translucent gray, giving his refined features an ethereal, detached quality. Reese had spent a month tempting him, yet he had never seen those eyes, always hidden behind a simple black silk blindfold. He hadn't known what the complete picture looked like, this chillingly serene face paired with that unnerving gaze. He also hadn't known their paths were fated to cross again so violently. Steeling himself, Reese strode into the room. He was a man now, not the long-haired figure in a silk dress. He had never spoken a word during that month. Eleanor Vance had wanted a tool, not a person with a voice. Caleb couldn't possibly recognize him. Still, a greeting was necessary for a roommate. Reese offered a tight, rehearsed smile and a nod. His voice felt rusty. "Hey, I'm Reese." Caleb's gaze drifted past him, toward the empty space behind him in the hallway, before settling back on Reese. The silence stretched, and just as Reese concluded he would be ignored, Caleb spoke. Caleb. His voice was like cool marble, elegant and remote. That was it. Reese felt a flicker of disappointment and turned to unpack. A quiet compliment reached him from behind. His voice, Caleb remarked, was very nice. Reese paused, glancing back. Caleb had already returned to his book, his posture suggesting the comment was an afterthought. Reese murmured a thank you, adding that Caleb's was as well. They didn't speak again. His mother had taught him that disaster followed speech. To curb his talkative childhood nature, she had enforced a strict rule of silence, punishing his outbursts with a belt before holding him and weeping. He hated her tears more than the punishment, so he learned to speak less, eventually earning the label of mute from his classmates, a label he never bothered to correct. Then she had left him. The only sign of her existence was a monthly deposit into his bank account. With no one left to protect or hurt, the self-imposed silence seemed pointless. The month at the Vance estate was the last time he had willingly played the part of a mute. Their other 2 roommates burst in later, a whirlwind of noise and energy. They froze, looking between Caleb's placid beauty and Reese's finer, sharper features, and groaned in theatrical despair about how they couldn't compete with 2 handsome, silent types. Caleb, with a weary sigh, merely called them noisy. Reese offered a small, non-committal smile. One of the roommates, Mark, asked if they were already taken, hoping to reduce the competition for girls on campus. Reese shook his head, confirming he was single. Caleb, however, glanced at Reese, a subtle downward turn to his lips, and stated that he did have someone. She was just hiding. The other 2 erupted in teasing laughter, joking about a romantic game of hide and seek. They then turned their relentless curiosity on Caleb, bombarding him with questions they'd read in tabloids about his vow of silence and his family's reputation as Boston Blue Bloods. Caleb ignored most of their inquiries, finally offering a cryptic, unrelated answer. He was trying to find his cat. She didn't meow, he explained, and he'd never heard her voice. Closing his eyes meant he might miss her. The roommates exchanged a look, realization dawning. The teasing renewed, filling the room with boisterous energy. They asked if he'd ever seen this cat, to which he replied he hadn't. Mark pointed out that keeping his eyes open wouldn't help then. Caleb's response was quiet but firm. He would recognize her. Only Reese wasn't laughing. A cold dread seeped into his bones. A cat that didn't meow. He knew Caleb was talking about him. 2 months prior, whispers in certain circles spoke of the Vance heirs' sudden spiritual retreat. The family was in a panic. A rumor had surfaced about a prophecy from decades ago, a mystic who had warned that Caleb, born with a second sight, would be the end of the family line unless he pursued a path of spiritual devotion. As a child, Caleb would stare into empty corners and hold conversations with the heir. Fearing the prophecy, his mother had him consult with spiritualists who advised a regimen of madion and sensory deprivation, wearing the blindfold for 18 years to ground him in the physical world. But upon turning 18, he took the practice to an extreme, isolating himself in the family's private chapel. Desperate, Eleanor Vance began a search for someone to lure her son back to worldly desires. Reese, in dire need of funds, had accepted the challenge. Dressed as a woman, his then long hair cascading down his back, he met with Mrs. Vance. She was pleased by his appearance, and even more so when she learned he was a mute. It was perfect. He wouldn't leave a vocal impression on her son. She needed him to be an ephemeral temptation, gone once the job was done. The chapel was a cold, solemn space. Before Reese could even cross the threshold, Caleb's voice, clear and dispassionate, floated from within, advising him to leave the boring place. Unfazed, Reese approached, standing before him and blocking the stark altar. He bent down, letting his long hair and the hem of his dress brush against Caleb's face and legs. Caleb asked what he had said. Reese remained silent, taking Caleb's hand from his prayer beads and tracing words into his palm. "Don't send me away. I need the money." Caleb's sculpted face remained impassive. He simply withdrew his hand and suggested Reese find a place to sit. Reese spent the month in that chapel, his life settling into a bizarre 9-to-5 routine. He communicated by writing on Caleb's skin, first on his arm, then his shoulders, his back. He told Caleb his name was Serafina, that he was slightly older, and that Caleb could call him his sister. Caleb, without expression, refused, stating it wasn't right. 1 month later, Reese's fingers were tracing the lines of Caleb's firm stomach. Caleb's lips were a tight line. He grabbed a handful of Reese's hair, pulling his head back. Just as disappointment began to set in, Caleb's mouth crashed down on his. The kiss was ravenous, while Caleb's hand tangled fiercely in his hair, as if trying to merge them into one being. Reese managed to hold his phone up behind Caleb's back and record a short, damningly intimate video. They didn't go all the way. He had no intention of his disguise being discovered so completely. He pushed Caleb away, feigning shyness, collected his payment from Eleanor Vance, and fled. He'd heard that after that day, Caleb abandoned his madion and began searching for a tall, silent woman with waist-length hair. Reese ran a hand through his own short, ear-length cut. After the payout, the first thing he'd done was visit a barber. One less identifying feature. If Caleb still recognized him, he wasn't human. Later that evening, after a shower, Reese walked back into the dorm room, shirtless. The chatter died instantly. 3 pairs of eyes fixed on him. "Damn, Reese," Mark breathed, his face flushing. "You're not just pale, you're pink. That's not fair." Josh, the other roommate, leaned in close, poking his chest. And soft, too. If you weren't flat, I'd question my sexuality. Seriously, dude, so smooth. Reese frowned and playfully swatted at Josh's rear, remarking that he wasn't so bad himself. Josh yelped in mock outrage. Amid the laughter, a gray university jacket, smelling of cedar and old books, was thrown over Reese's head, cloaking him in darkness. Caleb's voice was frigid. Show some decency. Reese pulled the jacket off. They were all guys. What was the issue? Then an idea sparked. Making Caleb dislike him would be the perfect defense. He would be too annoyed to look closely, and Reese's secret would be safe. He leaned in close to Caleb, holding the jacket, and blew a soft breath against his ear. What's the matter? Jealous? Caleb's pale eyes stared at him, unblinking. The look was unnerving. Reese's bravado faltered. He was about to retreat when Caleb moved, retrieving a clean towel. His long, pale fingers gripped it, and before Reese could react, Caleb was scrubbing his head with a surprising force, as if trying to shake the water from his brain. When he finished, he stated flatly that Reese should dry his hair properly to avoid getting water on the brain. Reese was certain. Caleb despised him. He had seen what Caleb was like when he was intrigued. Reserved, gentle, patient. Reese was the only person who had lasted a full month in that chapel. Others were dismissed within a day. He had attributed it to his own mysterious charm, unable to fathom why Caleb would fall for a silent, unseen woman. Now, alongside a sense of security, there was a strange, unidentifiable ache. The university required all freshmen to participate in a grueling preseason rowing camp. Reese, fair-skinned and prone to sunburns, coated himself in a thick layer of sunscreen. While the other guys on the team quickly tanned under the relentless August sun, he and Caleb remained conspicuously pale. A student from the women's team jokingly asked their coach why the two of them looked so out of place. This provided an opening for Zach, a burly guy from their class who had taken an instant dislike to Reese. He sneered that of course they weren't tan, not when they slathered on sunscreen like a girl. He suggested Reese might be more comfortable on the women's team. Before Reese could formulate a response, he felt a hard shove from behind, sending him stumbling forward. A strong arm caught him from the side, steadying him. It was Caleb. Reese pushed away from Caleb, calmly dusting himself off. He was done being pushed around. He turned to Zach and asked for his name. The larger man puffed out his chest. Zach, Reese said slowly, get lost. Before he could say more, a hand clamped over his mouth. Caleb was behind him, one arm circling his waist, the other silencing him. With a sudden, fluid motion, Caleb's leg shot out, his foot connecting solidly with Zach's chest, sending the bully staggering backward. Caleb's warm breath was against Reese's ear. Just hit him, he murmured. Don't give him orders. The coach returned to find the scene in disarray. After several witnesses corroborated the story of Zach's unprovoked aggression, Zach was forced to apologize publicly. Caleb, for his part in the violence, had to stand out with him during practice. He did so with an unnerving poise, looking less like he was being punished and more like he was modeling. The incident triggered something in Reese. The near miss of his command, get lost, brought back the old terror. His grandparents, a trip to the market, a trivial argument, and his childish, angry wish for them to die. A few days later, a freak accident with a farm vehicle. The whispers in his village had been suffocating, calling him a jinx, a crow's mouth. His mother, terrified, had consulted a medium who confirmed it, saying his words held a dangerous weight. That was when she began enforcing the silence, a desperate attempt to protect the world and Reese from himself. Now, he felt that old fear resurfacing. He had wanted Zach to go away. What if next time he wished for something worse? He retreated into silence again. His roommates grew concerned, complaining that he'd become cold and distant. They blamed Zach and even chastised Caleb for not protecting him better. Caleb accepted the blame quietly, his pale eyes fixed on Reese, telling him he could talk to him about anything. But how could he? His deception was a landmine between them. The rumors started soon after, spreading across the campus gossip app. Anonymous posts depicted a pretty boy, R, who was selling himself to the Vance heir. The comments were vicious, speculating on his background, suggesting he couldn't afford tuition otherwise. The posts were quickly deleted. Reese saw them just in time to post a screenshot with the comment, "Legal action is being taken." The page and the posters should be very careful. The next day, the app student moderator was replaced. Then, a new post appeared, stunning everyone. It was a single sentence. "This is Caleb Vance. Say one more word of slander and you will regret it. And Reese is not an orphan. His mother loves him very much." The comment section was silent. Zach was quietly expelled from the university. No one knew if it was the school's doing or Caleb's. Caleb, who barely used a phone, had asked his roommates how to create an account and post to the app. When they asked him what he did for entertainment, he had simply replied, "Madion." They couldn't believe someone so detached could be in love. Caleb was quiet for a moment, then admitted he didn't know how to love. All he knew was that with her, his calm heart was in turmoil. He couldn't bear to be harsh with her, couldn't stop himself from wanting to touch her, to kiss her, to possess her entirely. His roommates were stunned into silence by the intensity of his words. Then his voice became small, wounded. "Then why did she run away? She was the one who approached me first." The roommates, deprived of the full story, posted a picture of Caleb looking downcast, with the caption, "Stop the rumors. Our boy is heartbroken over someone else." The comments exploded with curiosity. Reese saved the photo, staring at Caleb's vulnerable expression. He looked nothing like the untouchable figure he was supposed to be. An unfamiliar sourness churned in his gut. Caleb couldn't love a deception, a person whose gender he didn't even know. Reese decided to avoid him completely. He would spend all his free time in the library. But on the very first day, Caleb sat down in the chair directly opposite him, offering a clipped, "What a coincidence." After a week of Caleb silently shadowing him in the library, Reese's resolve shattered. The proximity, the constant, unnerving pull he felt toward him. It was destroying his plan. "Caleb," he said, his voice low and strained, "stop following me." Caleb looked up from his book, a flicker of something unreadable in his pale eyes. "The library isn't yours." Reese let out a humorless laugh. "Fine. If I can't get rid of you, then you'll just have to become mine. Stop pining for your lost love, Caleb. Like me instead." Caleb's expression went blank, then twisted into something strange. After a long moment, a single word escaped his lips. "Okay." It worked. Just like that, the untouchable Caleb Vance became his. Reese found a dark satisfaction in ordering him around. He made Caleb fetch his coffee, do his laundry, even his underwear, which Caleb did with a cold face and a less-than-perfect result. One afternoon, with their roommates out, Reese locked the dorm room door. He turned to Caleb with a slow smile. "Caleb, take off your clothes." Caleb hesitated, a faint blush coloring his cheeks, before his hands moved toward Reese's own shirt. Reese stopped him, clarifying he meant Caleb's own clothes. With a flicker of something like relief, Caleb began to unbutton his shirt. Reese watched, mesmerized, as the fabric parted to reveal a lean, sculpted torso. He had muscles. How did a man who spent his days mating have muscles? He reached out and prodded Caleb's chest. Caleb's eyelids fluttered. His voice was husky. "Reese, this isn't fair." "You're right," Reese agreed. "You still have your pants on." Caleb looked at him, stunned. "Here? In the dorm? We can go outside if you prefer," Reese taunted. "But first, kiss me. Let's see what you've got." Caleb simply reached out, covered Reese's eyes with one hand, and captured his mouth with the other. The kiss was deep and suffocating, leaving Reese dizzy and breathless by the time Caleb finally pulled away. Reese gasped for air, murmuring that he had proven his point. Caleb's chest rumbled with a low sound. "That was only once," he said, his arms tightening around him. "We'll do the rest somewhere else." He took Reese to the Vance estate. The house was empty. He led Reese not to a bedroom, but back to the cold, solemn chapel. As Caleb began to undress again, Reese's eyes darted to the impassive statues. This felt deeply sacrilegious. Caleb seemed to read his mind, explaining that the transgression was part of the thrill. He produced a familiar black silk blindfold and tied it over Reese's eyes. "It's not my first time disrespecting the divine," he whispered. "If you're shy, you don't have to look." Sensory deprivation heightened everything, the sounds, the touch. Overwhelmed, Reese tried to pull the blindfold off, but Caleb caught his wrists, pinning them behind his back. As they sank onto the hard Madion cushions, Reese, on the verge of passing out from the intensity, tried to tell him to stop. Caleb silenced him with another kiss. Eventually, the blindfold was transferred from Reese's eyes to Caleb's. Reese, his vision blurry, reached up to touch Caleb's face. "Like this?" he asked, his voice trembling. "Can you tell who I am?" Caleb held him tighter, his voice a low growl against his skin. "I can. There's no one else but you." It was a cunning answer. Reese didn't dare press for clarification. This boy would never fall for him if not for his accursed words. A sudden, sharp grief pierced through the haze of passion. "Caleb," he whispered, clinging to him, "can you like me for a little while longer?" Caleb's body went still. "Why do you ask that?" Reese didn't know why. Maybe because from the first moment he'd seen him in this chapel, a part of him had genuinely wanted to seduce him, the money just a convenient excuse. "Are you still going to look for the mute girl?" "Yes," Caleb said. "What would make you stop?" "If she admitted she loved me." Reese felt a surge of irrational anger. "Then aren't you cheating on her right now?" Caleb stiffened. He confessed it couldn't be helped. It was true. Caleb was only following his orders. Reese was jealous of himself, and he kicked Caleb away in frustration. The strange dynamic continued. Every day, Reese swore he would focus on his studies, and every day, one look from Caleb was enough to derail him. Finally, he'd had enough. He pointed at Caleb. "Go home. Stop distracting me." And Caleb did go home. He just took Reese with him. In the car, Reese looked at Caleb's profile and sighed. "You know, you remind me of my mother." "Your mother loves you very much," Caleb said softly. "I can't replace her." "What do you know?" Reese snapped, his voice bitter. "You don't know anything. I'm not wanted by anyone." Caleb pulled the car over, his hand closing around Reese's wrist. "I know everything," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "She didn't abandon you. She's with you always." Reese froze, the memory of the prophecy. Caleb's second sight, slamming into him. He looked around the empty car. Tears began to stream down his face, hot and sudden. Caleb's words meant only one thing. His mother was gone. The thought that she had died was infinitely more painful than the belief that she had left. "Caleb," he choked out, "I think I hate you right now." Caleb leaned over, gently kissing the tears from his cheeks. "You can hate me, just don't hate her." He was still trying to process the grief when he saw a figure standing at the entrance of the Vance mansion. It was Eleanor Vance. Panic seized him. He turned to run, but Caleb held him fast. This face, Eleanor had seen it every day for a month. "Caleb," her voice was sharp with fury, "I won't stop you from finding companionship, even a substitute. But a man? Have you fallen so low?" Caleb pulled Reese calmly toward the house. "You told me to leave the chapel and find someone. I have. What is the problem?" Eleanor's anger was now directed solely at Reese. "I have one son. Are you trying to ruin him? What do you want? Money? Name your price and leave my son alone." Reese flinched. He remembered his mother, turning down a suitor years ago because the man wanted more children, and she had sworn Reese would be her only one. He knew then how much she had loved him. He was Eleanor's only son, her treasure. He and Caleb were wrong from the start. He had used Caleb, deceived him, and now commanded him. He was the villain. He pulled his hand free and faced her. "Mrs. Vance, you misunderstand. Caleb and I are just roommates. I took advantage of him." He turned to Caleb, his voice clear and sharp. "Caleb, listen to me. You don't like me. You like women." Caleb's face went cold. He pinched Reese's jaw, forcing his mouth shut. "Close that pretty mouth of yours," he said, his voice dangerously low. "You may think you're commanding me, but you're not." He pulled Reese into a half-embrace, facing his mother. "Mother, do you remember what the mystic said? That my line ends with me. Blame me. Leave Seraphina out of this." Both Reese and Eleanor froze. "Seraphina?" she repeated, confused. "That name sounds familiar." Caleb looked at her, his disappointment palpable. "You had him in your home for a month. How could you forget him so easily? I'm going to spend my life with him. Show some respect." Eleanor stared, dumbfounded, pointing a trembling finger at Reese. "He is that beautiful woman?" "I don't know about any beautiful woman," Caleb said, steering Reese toward the chapel, where his private rooms were. "All I know is that he is my Seraphina. Since you're the one who sent him to me, you must accept the consequences." Inside, Caleb said nothing, simply bathing him and pulling him into bed. The next morning, Eleanor was at the door, insistent. "He has bad intentions, Caleb. He took all that money and still came back for more. Find a nice girl." She stopped short when she saw Caleb massaging Reese's stiff legs. Caleb didn't look up. "I knew it was him from the beginning, Mother. A ghost has more sense than you do." He glanced toward the space beside her. "My mother-in-law is apologizing to you. She's asking you not to separate us." Eleanor shrieked and fled. Reese stared at Caleb. Was he serious? Caleb met his gaze. "Yes," he said calmly, his hands moving to the waistband of Reese's pajamas. "Now, where were we?" Reese stopped his hands. "If it's true, why are you undressing me?" Caleb leaned over him, a ghost of a smile on his lips. "For the thrill." "I'm kidding," he added, seeing Reese's expression. "She's gone now." Reese relaxed, but another question surfaced. "Why don't my words work on you?" "It's called manifestation, not a curse," Caleb corrected gently. "And it only works on ordinary people. My fate is too strong." "But," he added, a spark in his pale eyes, "it works when you say something I want to hear." He then explained everything. He knew Reese was a boy from day one. Reese's mother, as a spirit, had been his constant companion, invisible to all but Caleb. She had begged him not to send her struggling child away. She had told Caleb all about Reese, his hardships, his resilience, his kindness. "I imagined you 1,000 times," Caleb confessed. "When you finally appeared in my dorm, I wanted to hold you, but I controlled myself. I can be very patient. I was willing to play along with any game, even that ridiculous cheating scenario. But you shouldn't have tried to run." Reese was speechless, a wave of shame and relief washing over him. He felt a sudden awkwardness and mumbled that he had to go. Caleb watched him silently. Reese took a few steps, then remembered Caleb's. He turned back, took Caleb's hand, and said, "Let's go together. Back to campus." Caleb's smile was brilliant. Reese muttered, "You may be the end of your family line, but so am I. You'll have to talk to my mom often so she doesn't get lonely." Caleb nodded, then shook his head. "She said that once she sees us settled, her work will be done. She can move on." Reese looked at the empty air beside him. "Mom," he whispered, "I was never angry. Just sad. Thank you for loving me. My only regret is that I never got the chance to take care of you. I hope, in your next life, you find happiness." A gentle weight settled on his head for a moment, then vanished. Caleb confirmed it. She was stroking his hair, telling him he was a good boy. His mother's spirit departed peacefully the year after he and Caleb were married overseas. Eleanor Vance eventually stopped trying to understand and simply accepted them. 5 years later, they adopted a little girl with a warm, familiar smile and bright eyes. Caleb told him it was her. They named her Serafina. It was his turn to protect her now. He was glad he hadn't arrived too late. He was glad he had Caleb.